Hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of the KLIQ Nation's Comic Book Chronicles. I am your host for tonight, Radicat, and you can find me at Radicat on Twitter and Instagram, I guess, if you want to follow me on post there that often. But you can also find me at News Nerds Need on Twitter, News Nerds Need Reddit, CB Caps on Instagram. And with me tonight, Brooklyn's finest. I'm not going to even belabor it, but the man who reps it all, our man in legal, Agent_70 on Twitter and Instagram.
What's up, everybody?
Can I give yourself some applause too?
All right, applause.
Come on, man. Don't be thinking of the sound effects for yourself. And not with us tonight for their various personal reasons is PCN_Dirt, who you can find him at PCN_Dirt on Twitter. You can also find him at PopCultureNet on Twitter, PopCultureNetwork.com, INeedComics.com, ThatNewToySmell.com, and whatever that Vine thing is going to be shortly coming. I should say new Vine alternative because Vine's not coming back, folks. It's dead.
It's kind of amazing. I thought we would have seen it already, but I guess it's still relatively early in the year.
Pretty much. Yeah, I guess. Well, yeah, I guess they're waiting till actual spring or something, which nowadays, who knows when that's going to be, given the global warming. But, and also, not with us tonight, TMDOGG98 on Twitter. CB Cron on Twitter, the KLIQ Nation on Twitter. Also, that's the KLIQ NATION, KLIQNation.com. Also, comic book resources. Go over there and check out his stuff. Right, he's writing his face off. And as we do every week, about this time, we come at you live, 9-ish or so p.m. Sometimes.
There you go.
More times not than more so, but we record live Thursday nights, live-ish, 9-ish so p.m. You can find us on the CSPN podcast network. What is going on tonight? CSPN.us.
Do it today.
Exactly. You'll be joining us soon. All that good jokes. You can also subscribe to this podcast on Google Play and Apple iTunes, aka Apple Podcasts, and SoundCloud. You can just go to the Cold Slither Podcast Network SoundCloud page, and of course, Spotify, which might sound slightly narcissistic, but I don't mean it to be. I have not actually checked out the Spotify listing.
It's pretty cool.
So it's definitely cool that we're finally on there. So that's dope. But go check it out there. You can do that. So we don't have to give it a rating. So yeah.
5 stars on iTunes.
I mean, you know, if you love us. If you don't love us, 4 stars. But yeah, so as we do every week about this time, we're going to get into the comic books of the week. And we're going to start off with the events book of the week, which has been for the last 5 weeks. Avengers: No Road Home, and number 5.
All right.
So, I appreciate the brevity of this book.
You mean how it's kind of moving along?
Yeah, it's kind of brisk. I'm appreciating it. Like, we're not in I'm being a weekly book. It has that advantage for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely, it's not like some other event book that's been taking years and years.
I think that one's a little bit more. What's funny about that, about the comparison, about the one that seems to be taking forever, is that I think this one is a little bit lighter in tone, and
it's not a line wide. Well, I guess that one's not either, but still, it's not a line.
What I was going to say is I think there's a little bit better division of labor, because there's lots of there's lots of heads working in the, there's lots of chefs in the kitchen on this one, and it's actually not a bad thing.
Yes.
They're able to get together and put out this weekly event, and it's pretty, and it's coming along very, it's very concise in its storytelling. And that's another way to put it.
Yes. So, basically in this issue, this is, I guess, if you have not been reading the solicits or, checking out the news that we've been bringing it out, this is one, this is the halfway point.
Right.
Two, we get to a point where there's a new challenger will appear, and the fact does at the end of this issue. And this book, which basically means that this issue seems like, hey, this is how we get from here to there.
Right. Exactly.
And this is, Scarlet Witch is basically doing narration on this, which also makes sense since why we know what's coming, but we don't know how it gets from there to there. There was a fight for one of the stones, which ended up being, passed off like football.
Right. Right. So just as a quick recap for those of you who aren't as caught up as we are on this event. So as Roddy Cat said, we're halfway home. So the chase is still on for these stones, the darkness, basically, that Nyx, the Greek god of darkness and whatnot, is chasing.
AKA the parts of our soul, quote unquote.
Right. So, there's lots of cool little things that the Avengers come up with to try to, play keep away. And as Roddy Cat was alluding to, is that there are instances where, there is a handoff, but also an instance where one of Nyx's children is like an abject failure, but also in the face of overwhelming brute force, and can kind of figure out who I'm referring to here if you know the characters that are participating in this book.
Mm-hmm. Do kind of love, and the other thing that this event kind of shows off is, like, even in disparate smaller groups as the Avengers are broken up into, they still work well as a team.
Sure.
Even, classic Avengers are like, hey, one doesn't actually have to know what the other is doing, but they can pick up on it real quick. Even in the cases where you got a character like Voyager, who's is not technically an Avenger,
right? Even though she went through that whole ordeal, exactly, the whole ordeal with no surrender,
right?
It makes things a little difficult to really see her as part of the team. But yeah, without spoiling too much, if you're familiar with any of the solicitations, any of the previews for what's upcoming in this series, that there is a certain licensed character that is coming in.
Yes, that the one that has their 2 or 3 other books of their own. Which actually the on that character, the last page of the book, or more specifically after the last page of the book, where they have it's not a letters column, but they basically
like an afterword.
Yeah. They basically have an afterword on it, and they talk about this character, which we're going to spoil it right now. Conan the Barbarian.
Sure.
Shows up, which Marvel just got the license back to, and they are using it heavily. But this page basically says that, and I think it was Zub that was talking.
Yeah, it's Jim Zub.
And he was mentioning that Conan is basically the Wolverine before Wolverine, which the way Marvel's handling him is probably is as true, if not more true, right now than it has ever been. Especially like he's got 2 books already, and he's going to be in another, going to be an Avengers book, and including, some of the mentions that with some of the people that were mentioned. Well, I'd say quote unquote Avengers, because I don't think it's going to be an official team, but nonetheless, like the way they're treating him is basically how they have been treating Wolverine back in the 90s, and like again the last year or two.
Right. Well, he's the way Zub puts it is that he's the savage template for all of these kind of bad to the bone, moral gray area characters. So
yeah, and I was like, and I thought about that when he said like that's true, and that just gave me and I'm like, oh, that made me kind of sad because I don't. It's not that I don't like the character, and it's not like I don't like Wolverine. It's just that, oh my god, enough is enough. Like
it's not so much. I was about to say, but it's not so much Wolverine because you remember when the Punisher was oversaturated,
or Deadpool,
right? Elektra was kind of oversaturated when they were trying to push the books around the time, like just before the unfortunate Jennifer Garner movie.
Yeah,
So yeah, like like the kind of like the grim and gritty Marvel characters, I guess.
Marvel Knights. Yeah,
Conan was the precursor, and we're not talking Conan O'Brien.
We are not.
So ultimately, what we have is, what my notes remind me is that, we finally figure out how Conan lives and fits into the story, and it makes sense because we're dealing with mythology, we're dealing with swords and sorcery. So you know what? Who else to drop in but a barbarian?
Well, it was a simple, like I said, it was like, well, they could have, like, okay, yeah, they could have threw it into the Savage Lane and used Khazar, or they could have been like, I don't know, just threw him anywhere and use any number of other characters and places, I suppose. But since like, hey, we got this license, we might as well just go ahead and integrate him with. And granted, this is not Conan's. If I'm not mistaken, this is not Conan's first time. One at Marvel, and two dealing with the Avengers.
Yeah, you're right on both counts, I think.
Yeah, because I vaguely remember reading something about that latter part.
Right.
So
what's kind of cool about this, and just to quickly wrap the conversation on this, the discussion, as I was saying earlier, it's just nice that the Greek pantheon has already been a part of Marvel Comics for so long, and it's so weird that this is just being unearthed now, and it's just being kind of mined for new material and different characters now. And then you throw in, like you were saying, you throw in the recaptured license of Conan the Barbarian. It's kind of like, let's all, it's, for some reason it feels fresher than it should. I guess that's the sort of the gist that I've got so far, is that even though it's still kind of I've complained that the story is a little too on the nose for Infinity Gauntlet style stuff, like chase the stones, get the stones before the bad guys get them, and reunite them to do bad things.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it feels like it's refreshing to me because it's characters that seem to be naturally part of the Marvel universe, but we really haven't seen much of. I'm not talking about Conan, but talking about the darker side of the Greek pantheon. So
right, I feel like I still kind of feel like the Conan part is kind of tacked on because they didn't necessarily have to use them, but nevertheless,
sure,
sure, why not? Like they had Rocket in here, and he has nothing to do with the Avengers at all, but
it's a tie-in to Infinity War and Endgame, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
Well, yeah. I mean that, but I mean that aside, I'm just like, okay, I guess.
And also, he's on Earth, so.
Well, yeah, but that doesn't mean they had to actually.
Oh, I know.
You could. He ain't showed up in the Fantastic Four. They're not, or Champions, which that would be hilarious.
Sure.
But regardless, it is what it is. So I'm not, whatever. They make use of them. I believe. What are we good? We're good with that.
Yeah, we're good on that.
Okay, we will go and hit up the new number one of the week. Well, one of the two number ones of the week, I should say, and I think the other one I'll probably say for rapid fire. But the magnificent Ms. Marvel has restarted. Well, not restarted, but just first of this lane. But what what I'm saying,
right? It's a brand new number one in a new volume of a Ms. Marvel book, and I thought this was a solid start. It wasn't like jaw dropping, but you have to remember that the character's been around for a couple of volumes now, and she's got a lot of excuse me, time in Champions as well. So we've definitely got a lot of places to see the character grow and develop. And it was kind of nice to see number one that does cater to a new reader, that does cater to someone who's just picking this up, who is inspired maybe by the cartoons, by the Captain Marvel movie, by something that says, you know what, I want to try a new number one that has Kamala Khan in it. Bam, here it is right on the shelf. And I know that stores probably ordered heavy on this because, you know, it's a number one for starters, and two,
I don't know about heavy, but I would like to hope they did some decent. They threw in some decent numbers, because I mean there are some people that are still on the, well, we don't need this character, blah blah blah.
Right. Well, listen, anything with these new and slightly updated versions of characters, I know that there's lots of negativity online, but I can also say, just from my own personal anecdote, obviously it's anecdotal experience, and obviously it's core 5 borough NYC experience, but the comic book stores that I see have plenty of supply of this selling out on Wednesday. So
yeah.
They definitely had, and it's, and it's not a terrible thing that you have a book like this, a number one issue, and you order a little bit heavy on it, and it sits around, and people who are looking to catch up, they can easily pick it up off the shelf without having to dig into the back issues.
Yeah, I mean, Miss Marvel's one of my favorite. I mean, I feel confident saying yours too.
Sure.
Favorite newer characters. So.
No, absolutely.
So so she deserves it. She deserves a little bit of it. But get into the book itself. Like you kind of pretty much set it off. I was like, yeah, there's not totally much that happens here, but there's a couple of things that kind of get pointed at to going forward.
Right.
And it does a fairly decent job in the beginning of catching up new readers. Speaking of that point, because you have a nice little talk with a long-standing side character of the book, and they're using that as a catch-up, and then we pivot to Kamala going home, which this is the part where it kind of was like, I'm sure this is going to come up at some point fairly soon, even with what happened at the outset of this issue. Like, so Kamala goes home, and then a revelation happens to which I almost forgot that. It was like, wait, there was a character who didn't necessarily know, that didn't know, because I knew one half of her parents knew, but I didn't know the other. I totally forgot that the other half did not know.
Sure.
Miss Marvel, and that came out to this, which seemed like out of nowhere, but obviously there's going to be something going on board, and then it even hints to something else possibly with that character going on, and then it just kind of goes into whatever. And I'm not going to say maybe uncharacteristic, because we know Kamala can be a little bit of a
rebellious teen.
Yes. But to the point that she was in this book, in this issue, was like, okay, that seems a little bit much for her. But then again, if I think back a little bit, I'm pretty sure it's like, nah, this kind of falls in line. It's
right. What's funny about that is it kind of touches on what I was saying earlier, is that we see Kamala in other books, and there's other places for her to continue her development outside of her own solo title, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're not 100% sure if this is the same voice that we're seeing in other books, but ultimately,
in a way, it is.
Yeah, exactly. I think that maybe we haven't really seen this aspect yet, and I like that Saladin Ahmed, who's taken over the character and starting on this book, kind of picked up on this particular plot point and just jumped right into it and just said, all right, boom. But then there's a cliffhanger ending that turns it on its head.
Right.
And which may tie into what the framing sequence at the beginning of the book sets up as well, which is a definite tease that Kamala is going to go into space on her own at some point.
Yeah, that seemed like a space and time thing, so I don't know. Yeah, there's going to be some sort of journey one way or another with that.
Right. I definitely think there's going to be something, more deep space ish. Because I think Ahmed says it in Ahmed says it in the
back page.
Yeah, the letters page, like the intro letters page. He says it himself. He mentions something about the depths of Kree space.
Right. Which makes sense considering she's inhuman and you know, part Kree, I guess, in that sense.
Right.
So yeah, so that is it. Like I said, this is a pretty good start. We'll see where it's going. I've said this before. Sorry to see G Willow off this book, but I think it's pretty much in good hands with Saladin Ahmed. So
I think so too. Well, yeah, let's hope. Yeah, I was about to say, let's hope. What were you saying?
I said, hopefully he gets a chance to bear that out.
Yeah. I think so, and I hope that I think he's got a good handle on what makes this character good. So my hope is that he's able to expand on that.
Right. Oh, and I guess the only other thing I'm going to say is before we can move on, and there's an aspect that we were talking about a lot earlier that we will probably see again in Champions. I don't think about it, given what happened last, and
sure,
and what we know is probably coming. So that being to say, so we're going to move on to another book. I don't know. Well, I know we've read a couple of things on the side. I want to see if you read something, because if you did and you did not. So what I didn't tell you going into this, because I had read a decent sized books, but they some kind of way, so behind the scenes, a couple of the books started rolling into, kind of had themes that rolled into the other books.
Okay.
Or something at the very least did. And in this case, like I read Shuri first.
Oh, okay. I skimmed
Marvel because,
Right. I skimmed Shuri because I understood that, I understood what had happened. I'm just behind, but this seemed like a good place to jump on. So I skimmed it. I can talk about it.
Okay, sweet. Then we'll talk about Shuri number 6, which if had we done this in another order, probably would have, whatever, but doesn't matter. Shuri number 6. So Shuri is in Brooklyn. In fact, yeah,
under cloak.
Well,
so, yeah, she's flying there under a cloaked Panther ship,
right?
Because she's investigating something.
Right, the stuff that she's been basically. So yeah, so in the beginning arc of this book, there was this big space cricket that she was fighting in outer space when she was there, and that's where she met Rocket and Groot. And that space cricket ended up following her back to Earth and causing some havoc in the last couple of issues since then. And now she's trying to track down this same space cricket, which is called a lubber, and I call it cricket or grasshopper, whatever. But the space bug that's causing. Sorry, there's a mosquito or something in here.
You can tell that Roddy Cat is in a warmer clime.
I know, right? It's like, geez, I ain't trying to get bit. Anyway, sorry. Not cutting that out. So anyway, like I said, Shuri's trying to find this creature so she can send it packing. And she's following the black holes that it is leaving in its wake, and that brings us to why she's in New York, because her readings have brought her so. But apparently she comes in. Well, she doesn't. But apparently there has been similar stuff that's been giving out said black holes, and one of which they found that one Miles Morales, Spider-Man, is dealing with at the beginning of this book. And that's how she ends up meeting Miles Morales, which I could have sworn at some point in time they may have met before, but apparently not.
This definitely felt like a new meeting, because I get a kick, and I know that I know that Miles can't be happy about this, about being referred to as the other Spider-Man or the junior Spider-Man, right. Or I think in this one was the bootleg Spider-Man.
Not only was
that in this?
That was in this. Yes.
Okay.
So not only that, but
I remember reading that.
Yeah, but she calls him Spider Boy.
Right, and that's not very, that's not very good for the ego.
Yeah, but she apologized later, and he's like, because he even says it in this book. He was like, I'm happy to be not as famous as the other guy, but
He's like, yeah,
but still can still can get his props.
he's like, yeah, I know. He's yeah. It was so much easier when Slot had moved Peter out of New York, to do like the globetrotting thing. Well, obviously that story ended. So
yes.
But anyway, from what I remember of this book, and I'm pulling it up now, is that the characters find themselves having to trace the black hole radiation, the black hole phenomena across the river into the great state of New Jersey.
Yes, to a familiar hall of academic prowess that we know of from another character's book, which we just talked about.
Right. So what's funny about this is that there is the appearance of a villain that was kind of out of the blue. It was definitely not related to the Shuri, the I guess the alien character that we had seen in the first arc in Shuri.
But at the same time, like, okay, it kind of makes sense because now I think of like there's been a couple of older villains that have popped up in this book. Like Moses Magnum has shown up. Was the villain of last issue.
Okay.
So stuff like that has kind of happened. But yeah, but this particular version that shows up in this, which they do reference the fact that it has shown up in West Coast Avengers as of recent.
Mm-hmm.
So they do acknowledge that part. But yeah, you're right. It was like, oh, that's kind of out of blue for him to be here. And we are talking about one classic, I guess you could say, Wacko's villain in the name of Graviton. Thank you.
Graviton.
Yep.
In case the bell stepped over Roddy's vocals. Yeah, so Graviton shows up, and Graviton can basically take on an entire Avenger squad. So it's always funny to see these villains who are faced with like a bunch of street level characters, and well, not that Shuri's a street level character; she's sort of an in-betweener.
Right.
And when we talk about characters venturing over into the great state of New Jersey, we have to talk about the Protector of Jersey City.
Yes, who shows up?
Just talking about, right? We were just talking about.
Exactly. Which, like I said, if this had gone in another order, that would have been perfect. But which has nothing to do with her number one, but still.
Mm-hmm.
But which again, if you haven't been following solicits or the news, and I'm pretty sure that we had a news article about this saying that hey, this was going to happen. It is worth noting that this issue and the next issue, which the team up is happening in, is not being written by the writer Nadia Corafor, but by Vida Ayala. Yeah, I apologize. I don't want to hate pushing people's names. So I apologize for that. Who you may or may not know, but I know she's writing Livewire over at Valiant now. And, she's been getting a little bit of buzz lately. So good on her. And Paul Davison, which is a name I'm not familiar with, is doing art.
Okay.
Which kind of shows because like there are some differences in the art from the normal art that's like, weird. Like even when Ms. Marvel comes in at the last page, it was like she looks there's part of her that doesn't necessarily look like her, or it could be an older version of her. I don't know. It's just, but that's just a weird art thing in some of the cases. But regardless, I enjoyed this. This is a particular click of the week. The team up between Shuri and Miles, and actually it brings up another thing because Miles being a legacy character, and so is Miss Marvel,
and so is Shuri. To a certain extent.
What I was going to bring up, because I never actually thought about Shuri as a legacy character, even though she technically is, because she is, she's the Black Panther's sister. She has taken up the mantle of, and quite possibly may end up doing it again while he's off doing whatever is in his other book, has taken up the mantle of Black Panther.
Right.
So she absolutely is, but like I said, rarely ever actually think about her like that. So, and this kind of brought that to light because, like I said, both her and Miles being both legacy characters, they have to realize that they have, they're in the shadows of their peers and or siblings. They definitely came to an understanding early on.
Oh yeah, they definitely have that in common. Like it's a tall, long shadow that both of those characters cast.
Mm-hmm. And they both know that, and kind of like, and I think Miles makes the point of saying was, luckily we can, we kick butt in our own ways.
Sure.
Different from our peers. So,
all right.
So look at that.
I was about to say, speaking of that,
yes.
Did you want to wrap up any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, we're good.
Okay. I was going to transition to Amazing Spider-Man number 17. That's another book that we both read. Speaking of, one of the primary characters that are casting these long shadows for the legacy characters.
You see how this stuff rolls together? I like it.
So this was a lot of fun. This is a potential click of the week for me. This is the first chapter of the first proper chapter of the Hunted storyline. No prequel chapters, no.
Well, apparently there's
no fight on Geonosis. There's no.
There's no road to. Well, actually, technically, the last issue was the road to, I guess.
Right. Right. But there's been lead up to this. There's been plenty of setup. This is not.
And there's going to be apparently 3 more. Like I was saying, there's going to be 3 more of those HU issues coming up from according to the back of the book.
Sure. So, the opening of the book harkens back to, and I've got I have to put on the shelf. I've seen it online, but the framing sequence before the credits roll in the book is essentially a reimagining of the framing sequence from Kraven's Last Hunt by J.M. DeMatteis and Mike Zeck.
Yes.
From back in the day. And obviously that is what the story is basically a solid kind of part 2 of. It's a solid continuation. So the opening framing sequence harkens back to that. And for fans who have not yet read that, it stands the test of time.
Yeah.
Definitely go back and read that.
It is definitely one of the more classic Spidey arcs that you should definitely read. You're a fan.
It's collected in plenty of places. I'm pretty sure it's collected digitally, but there's plenty of trade. There's plenty of versions of the trades out there. That trade has almost never gone out of print, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Since it came out, because it's always been available.
Mm-hmm. Now, except for that being the said, so there is also stuff that comes like a little bit later, like, for example, spoiler alert, when Kraven comes back. If you haven't read Kraven's Last Hunt, then I'm not going to spoil the end of that. But regardless, Kraven goes away for a little while.
Sure.
And he ends up coming back at some point. And they actually recap. I can't remember because I caught up on the last few issues of Amazing actually this afternoon. So some of the stuff might run together. And they kind of go into him coming back, and they reference that, and they reference that, and
they reference how they basically fill in the gaps of how Kraven comes back and is
another book we'll get to later.
Right. How Kraven comes back and is how he gets from that point to where we are now.
Right.
Because where we are now is definitely a much different place. It's definitely a Kraven who has a plan that's always very dangerous. And there also are a bunch of story beats that are very familiar to anyone who read Kraven's Last Hunt, and even Spidey recognizes it, and that's the best part.
Right. Actually, I was in Spidey. Well, and again, harking back to another issue prior to this, I think anybody who's kind of been on the case of this, like Felicia, Black Cat, kind of was like, "Well, shoot, I know where this is going," because but yeah.
Right, but it opens in a very similar way to the original Kraven Kraven's Last Hunt story because, there's the matter of Spidey not being 100%. There's the matter of, being, if not under the weather, definitely not at tip-top shape, and then being brought low because of some other things that Kraven does.
Right.
And ultimately, all that stuff plays out. But what I like about this is that there's a B story. The B story in this is some Black Cat centric storyline. The storytelling.
Right, which we also know who's getting her own book in the coming months.
So it's kind of fun that it's not as dramatic, it's not as raw as the original Kraven's Last Hunt. But I like that, what my notes say is basically, it's a solid start to Spencer's homage to Kraven's Last Hunt. It lacks the haunting spare dialogue by J.M. DeMatteis and the haunting visuals by Mike Seck, but it's not a bad follow-up because, it's telling a different story. It's telling, it's going in a very different direction. And It's not as, at least at this point, it's not as dark, but obviously we're only just starting.
Right, and this one seems a little more grandiose to start too.
Sure.
Because if Kraven's Last Hunt, it starts not slow, but it has a pace.
Sure.
And it also had a total of 3 books going between at the time.
It was crossing between Amazing Web and Peter Parker.
So there is also that difference there. But yeah, like I said, it's a bit of a grandiose start, which I was like, all right. I wasn't sure where this was going coming into it, but I was like, all right, sure, all right.
Yeah, it's a big scale. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of characters in play in this. There's a lot of them.
Yes. So we will say, just to put a little bit on this. So there's a hunt. It's Kraven. There's the last couple of issues, if we haven't been keeping up, Kraven has had Taskmaster and Black Ant hunting down animal-themed villains. For what purpose, we did not know until this issue. And also in a nice little tie back to Secret Empire, a certain implement is being used to kind of house this thing.
Oh, sure.
This hunt, which I'm like, you would know better than I would. I know Central Park is fairly big.
Yeah.
Is it big enough to oh, I guess so.
It is. I mean, there's Central Park is multiple acres. Like, we're talking, it's not a small place.
Right.
So for something like this, where if they're able to put up basically a dome over it, that's a pretty imposing amount of ground for these characters to cover.
Some would say a Thunderdome.
Listen, that's definitely a thought. And it's interesting. One of the things that I remember seeing in your notes is that one of the things that the Cravenoffs do. Spoiler alert. I did ring the bell on this, if I'm not mistaken, but just in case. Spoiler alert. Kraven is not alone. Kraven has many characters on his side. One is a clone son. We'll call him Boba Fett. No, I'm kidding.
Another is a classic, or some would argue a classic X-Men villain.
Yes, and
he's not in his own world.
Right, he's basically the architect of this, and and it's these characters that are kind of setting this entire scheme up. And at first, what we have, and what I didn't realize until I read the afterword, which is the first thing that is unleashed upon these animal-themed villains and Spidey, who has been put back into his black costume.
Which that part was like, wait, how did that? When did that? Well, not when, but how did that happen? Because we saw when he gets dragged into this, like, but like, wait, if that's the case, someone knows his identity, unless like how did somebody had to dress him in that thing.
Right. Well, there's two things I wanted to just finish up the thought that I had, which is the first thing that all these characters face are robots. I didn't think they were robots until I read the afterword.
Right.
But basically it's a set of arcade robots going after them. That's one.
Which now makes a little bit more sense. But yeah, going into it, you're just like, well, okay, there's these other people that are kind of in play that are suggested to be, a part of it.
Right. And two, this is another callback. The changing of the costume is kind of it's kind of a callback to Kraven's Last Hunt, because if you recall, actually, come to think of it, he was, mild spoiler for a 20-plus-year-old story.
In a black suit.
I think he was buried in the black suit. I don't know if he ever unmasked him, come to think of it.
No, you know what? Actually, no, I don't think he did then. But going into this, he was not in the black suit, and the suit he was in was getting torn up.
Right.
And then he got miraculously changed or somehow changed into the black suit.
Right. My guess is that Kraven put on the younger Kraven put it on him.
But still,
just to set it up. And the younger Kraven wouldn't have any reference.
But he would still know who he was.
Or he would have seen it, but yeah, he wouldn't know offhand. Right. He wouldn't have the same reference that Kraven the Elder would.
Right.
So,
and matter of fact, that could have, that was the case. Like, hey, I changed the suit and I seen his face, Dad. Hey, what's it? Unless, which I have
be a plot point later.
Maybe. Or which is another theory that I had, because we know black cats in play. Maybe she was the one who dressed him, which that seems, I don't know, doesn't seem as likely, given that she's also kind of a hostage.
Right.
But seems more plausible than like, hey. Right. Either way, it doesn't seem plausible, but it might be a minor point that may not even have any legs. But still, it was just like, I was like, that seems like something that should come up if it didn't.
Well, Spidey's wondering about it. That's enough.
I would. Well, he doesn't. Well, yeah, he did definitely. Yeah, he
didn't have time. He didn't have time.
Right.
Dwell on it because he was set up. Right.
Yeah, I woke up, everything started jumping off. So yeah, which like you said, I'm sure could possibly be a plot point. So I think we've run that one out. I think the only other thing I would say is, like, in my catching up to this, I noticed that what was it? Amazing Spider-Man 16 HU, I believe, had an end credit scene. Or was it 16 or 7? Was it 16 or 16 point HU? One of them two had an end credit scene, which was funny to me. I'm like, they did this, huh? All right, cool. Because you see, like I said, the one of those issues ended, and then you had the letters page, and then right after that, I was like, oh wait, here's another panel. Here's another page. So I thought that was kind of amusing. Anyway, that is that. We shall move on to. You got one? Let's see.
I've only got a few this week. I think we both read Tony Stark Iron Man #9.
We did, and just like you did with Sherry, I kind of skimmed that one. So yeah, we'll go ahead and talk about that.
Right. I mean, very, very quickly, and this is the same. It's the same criticism I've had for this book, and I remember Tim Dog 98 saying this was boring, and I agree in the sense that it's taking a long time for Slott to make this Escape story pay off, because it's an allegory for so many things going on, like in the real world. With like VR life and the way a lot of people use social media.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just taking a long time for the story to pay off. There's a deeper meaning behind the story, and there's actually possible ramifications, because there's a teased quote unquote reveal at the end. That kind of makes up a cliffhanger. So there's a lot of stuff to this where it's a long time. It's a long time for the story arc to really pay off.
I mean, and to be not one way or the other, sometimes Slot likes to play a long game with some of
Oh,
his
he is.
stories. So this could be one of those. I'm not, just not making any excuses for it. And again, I haven't been reading this either. Like, I just so happened to see an article or two about this. And I'm like, let me check this book out and see what's up.
He's definitely playing the longest of games in this because it's taking forever.
Yeah, which also could go back to the fact that Tony Stark and Iron Man as a book. Sometimes you gotta do some things in order. There's going to be some slow moments.
Sure.
And that being said, there's been some definite classic arcs and runs of the past, but
All right. Well, if you have any other books that you want to speak in depth about, go ahead, and then we can start rapid fire.
Yeah. The only other thing I was going to say about Iron Man #9 is, hey, roller skates show up. Classic roller skates show up. So, and a couple of museums.
And an old school Black Widow costume.
Right.
I was like, oh my goodness, I haven't seen that in ages.
Right. I was like, okay, this is hitting a couple of buttons here, but that was kind of amusing. And then Machine Man, actually, and Machine Man showing up in this one,
right?
And,
bringing in a meta reference.
Yeah, reacting to some of the stuff. It's like, including which I found funny. It was like, wait, your villains actually let you sit there while you suit up, which is a trope that if you've ever watched, like, say, Power Rangers or any other superhero show that has some kind of transformation sequence or something, like, or Voltron or something. It's like, wait, you're just going to sit there and let them just form up like that? And
I was about to say, what's funny about Voltron is I always thought they flew away from the battle to suit up, and not enough of the bad guys went after them. Right,
like, come on, one well played shot. You was like, just not. Which actually in the new one, I think they may have played with at one point for an episode. But yeah, classically,
I think so.
Yeah. But yeah, I was like, wow, they're just gonna let you just suit up and get out of there, right? Like, so I thought that was a nice little reference. Anyway, yeah, I think I'll have one or two before we
go ahead. Everything else for me is potentially rapid fire.
Sweet. Yeah, it's somewhat same here. I will say there's another, matter of fact, I'll do this. Another #1 book that just came out this week, and that is Transformers #1. So, as I say in my notes, new book, familiar faces, new kid bot. There's a bot who gets named for and gets referenced for sayings that they have. I'm not too crazy about the name of this bot, and I assume this bot is going to come up. And I don't know in the history of Transformers that this bot has ever been named before or has come up before, but I am, and for my personal reasons, I'm not crazy about the name of this because it kind of brings up something in the real, the real world that's a problem.
Okay.
May have nothing to do with it, and it could be just me. But nevertheless, so this seems to be taking place before everything jumps off, before the war, before there was a Decepticons, apparently, before Orion Pax became Prime even. So yeah, so I'm thinking this is kind of a prequel to like the Great War and all that kind of stuff. So this is like probably millions of years back because Transformers are long-lived, and they even say this in the book. So we start off with Bumblebee and this new kid bot, who I feel like is going to end up being a Decepticon at some point when that, if and or when that jumps off in the course of this book. Depending on how far, ahead of the Great War and or Decepticons, whatever. So we have that going on, and they're trying to get to someplace out and about to meet up with another Transformer, Brainstorm, which some of you may not know, and then Windblade, which is another character who was in the last few years has become a prominent bot. And then on the other side of this, you have a meeting between Megatron and, of course, like I said, Orion Pax, who is not Prime yet, who may not be the leader of the Autobots. They look like they're both like senator types from the looks of things, and they're quote unquote old friends, but their friendship seems tenuous at this point. It's really slightly reminiscent of Battlestar, the new Battlestar Galactica, or the last Battlestar Galactica, in that. Actually, I guess the classic one too, where it's like, yeah, you got the leader and you got this other rebel leader who know each other and they're friends, but they're they kind of butt heads at times, that kind of stuff. And I'm sure there's a couple other things I could put along with that. But nevertheless, at this point, they are still somewhat on some kind of ground to where they're at least civil with each other. And there's no Decepticons, but there are Megatron's group is called the Ascendicons, something like that, as in the Ascendants or something. So at some point, there's going to be a name change with these, and this is even before the badges that we know to be the Autobots and the Decepticons. None of them are, this is not at that point. So I am curious. Like I said, they call this a bold new direction. It seems like they're just going to the prequels, or they're just making up the prequels at this point. So we'll see how that works out. But yeah, like I said, I don't know. There's at the end of this issue, there's something happens when Bumblebee and Windblade and this new bot get to where they're going. That surely is going to be a thing that is going to spark something, going forward. No, I don't know.
Right.
It's something. It's something that could be interesting of Transformers. I still have yet to, whether this is going to play into the old stuff that has just ended like last year. Outside of the fact that, hey, you see some familiar people, but it's just in a different time period. Looks like some familiar stuff kind of gets reference sort of. Whether it's going to play into that stuff or not, which I assume it's going to be, who knows? But it's the first issue. That being said, I think everything else I have can be it can be not click or can be
rapid fire.
Yes.
Here we go. All right, so I've only got a few to run through. I've actually got one of my potential clicks of the week, which is Spider-Gwen, Ghost Spider number 6. I am still so glad to see Takashi Miyazawa continuing on art for this book.
I'm glad to see him getting work, because that dude's good. That dude's got great art.
Gwen is what's funny about this book right now, the current status quo post Spider-Geddon is that basically Gwen is this universe is playing her Peter Parker role, and Captain Stacy's sort of like Aunt May. This is obviously a traditional father-daughter, where the daughter is looking to figure out how to pay the bills, and because of what's happened in the story, there's a couple of traditional pathways that she cannot go down. This issue, I think, features the Earth 65 Miles Warren's first appearance, and anyone who is familiar with the Gwen Stacy story from Amazing Spider-Man will know that this is not a good development. As Ben Grimm would say, what a revolting development this is.
Nice.
There are interesting things teased in some of the panels that actually seem to be symbiote costume related, so there's plenty of stuff to look out for.
I thought they did it already.
There might be more. That's the thing. It's teased. It's not 100% sure. It's not certain the direction it's going in, to be honest. It's actually very reminiscent of Kraven's Last Hunt. The visuals, at least, in terms of little spiders being around. And that's not something that you normally associate with the symbiote costume. Right. So you're trying to figure out what's going on.
Other.
Could be. So another book that I read this week that I'll cover in rapid fire is The Batman Who Laughs, The Grim Knight #1. So this is part of this ongoing stuff in Batman with the Batman Who Laughs unleashing havoc on Batman himself. the Batman that we know. We get the origin of the Batman who shoots. That's what I call him in this book. And it's got a nice twist to the crime alley origin. Essentially, he's the Punisher with more money and better toys. Snyder and Tinian IV tease the bad things about to happen to Commissioner Gordon that are coming later on in this overall story. And lastly, I'll talk about the Punisher #9.
Speaking of,
the Punisher's story in Bagalia continues. This issue made me laugh out loud a few times and was well worth the read. Sometimes, especially with the Punisher, you don't need to be up to date with what's going on. You just kind of need to read the issues that kind of are a little bit of wish fulfillment when you see Frank Castle opening up all sorts of cans of whoop ass on people. And what's funny is that in this era of the Punisher, it's a lot like the Netflix shows. Roddy Cat was talking earlier about how he's not up to date with those, but it's not new for the Punisher's civilian identity to be common knowledge, but you can't help but kind of, chuckle and hear people, especially supervillains, say to him, "Oh, Frank." Like there's like a very, like some of them are a little condescending because they know he's just a regular dude who knows how to fight and has got lots of guns usually. So, the Punisher takes on Taskmaster in this, and if you're familiar with the Taskmaster, he is no joke when it comes to hand-to-hand combat and being a formidable opponent. So, it's kind of fun to hear, a character like that, a known, rogue, a known villain, who kind of has that is on a first name basis with the Punisher. So that's it for me for rapid fire.
All right, and on that note, with the speaking of Taskmaster, who again we brought up with the Spider-Man stuff, there is a video that you specifically, Agent 70, may want to check out. That's in the clickbait section.
Okay.
I will reference it in a little bit though. But on that note, let's see, Titans #35. So this is the penultimate issue of the series. There was a part of this that made me go like, and even a character in the story says this. I have no idea what's going on here. I kind of do, but there's part of it that doesn't make any sense because like what I thought to be the case going before this arc either it seems to be changed or I must have missed something then, because it was like, so basically Raven had lost a part of herself, and it ended up being here on Earth, which is another place that's source wall stuff, blah blah blah, whatever. And the Titans are over there fighting Mother Blood, who's trying to take over the place. And this is basically the part of the story is like, well, the Titans were having a bad time, and now they're regrouping and they're going into the next issue where everything's going to get laid out and dealt with, is going to get handled. And apparently there's also a slight tie to the Justice League annual, because there was some information that the Titans had that needed to get back to the Justice League, which apparently played out in what happened in just the Justice League annual, which I've not read, so I don't know. But it do reference the fact that, hey, if you want to see what happens with that, then there you go. Wonder Twins #2. I'm still kind of enjoying this book. It is a potential click of the week. First, there's a trip to that's a typo. Trip to a LexCorp ran prison, and it is assumed LexCorp by the name of the prison, which is called Lexicon Prison and Call Center.
Okay. Which,
is not common knowledge that there are prisons that will use prisoners as labor, and some would suggest call center. And also call centers being another type of printer that could be some social commentary, which this book is kind of full of. it's not heavy-handed, but it's definitely out there. But then they meet up with Beast Boy, speaking of the Titans, who is on the set of a commercial shilling a very familiar set of let's say classic comic book commercialized snacks, let's say.
Okay.
So that's kind of amusing in itself. But then the rest of the story is like it kind of comes back to a prisoner, and apparently the Legion of Doom's Farm League, and a certain member of the said Farm League who is, trying to go straight, but apparently, situation won't let them be for two different reasons. And again, like I said, there is some social commentary in that, but it's kind of amusing, I thought. So, and of course, we also get the appearance of the last member of, the last quote unquote member of the Wonder Twins ends up showing up somewhere in the course of this book. So that was pretty, an amusing run. Let's see, where are we at now? X-Force number 4. Kate Cable's intentions have come out. He finally told the team what he was in Transia, where whatever this place is, why he was there in the first place, because he was basically trying to find somebody, but he didn't let the team map. But he didn't let the team know that. But even though his initial what he told them was actually true, but may or may not have been, the full story. And if you've read Extermination, you kind of know what it is, because there have been a couple of different references in this issue to Extermination, not the least of which that, like I said, Ahab being here, which that gets dealt with as with a member, as classically happens with a member of X-Men / X-Force. A team member gets taken down, and it's kind of one, if you know about the X-Men and X-Force, it's the one that you know about that's on the team, which is kind of sad, because that's kind of, this person joins the ranks of another classic X-Men character that seems to have some hard luck with staying alive or being incapacitated, which, we don't know if this character is actually dead, but definitely there seem to be taken down a good bit in this course of this one. So yeah, some things happen. The art in this is still kind of weird and slightly jarring, but at the same time, Brisson's writing, it fits with Brisson's writing, which is decidedly more action-packed or action-focused, and this book seems to be along with that.
Right. If I'm not mistaken, the artist is still the same artist who was doing Cosmic Ghost Rider for a little while.
That's
and just and I remember noting that style is more easily tolerated, forgivable, accepted in a cosmic scenario, whereas X-Force, a little bit more real worldish.
Yeah, but in the case of, like I said, given the writing is more action heavy, and there's, it's not necessarily Michael Bay-ish, but there's a lot. It seems to go from one action point to another action point fairly quickly.
Right.
So it kind of lends itself still for that, even if it's still a little not necessarily muddy. It's not the right word that I'm looking for, but it's probably suited for this just as much as that. Let's put it that way, in a weird way. That being said, Winter Soldier number 4, penultimate issue of this miniseries. In that, going into this issue, the kid that was hired to go after Bucky at the beginning of this miniseries has kind of been on the road to being reformed. Last issue, well, thanks to Bucky, I should say. At the end of last issue, he met his father, coincidentally, who he hasn't seen since he was a baby, who apparently was locked up. And the complications that go along with that kind of thing happen during the course of this issue, but they get dealt with and also bring about another set of problems, similarly, going into the next issue. So there is that. And I believe that is it for me.
Alrighty, so we're gonna lead up to the clicks of the week.
We did get Tim's, which was Amazing Spider-Man 17, which is a pretty good pick.
I think I'm gonna second that.
Oh, sweet. Okay, well, it is so seconded by you then. For myself, we didn't get one for Dirt because he's hasn't been able to get any good reading in. But for myself, I'm thinking I am actually going to go with this is almost like a last week situation where there was like there's a couple of good books that was kind of really up there, but I think I'm going to go with Shuri number 6.
Nice
on this one. I do love the pairing of Miles and Shuri in this one, and Miss Marvel's going to be in the next one, so that ought to be great. Hopefully.
Cool.
But there we go.
Alrighty.
Now let's get into an ad read before we get into the news.
Our first ad read of the night is for Busted Tees. This episode of the KLIQ Nation's Comic Book Chronicles is sponsored by Busted Tees, your home for funny, awesome, cool t-shirts that are sure to get your friends' attention. Busted Tees puts many of their popular shirt designs on sale each week. Choose from several eye-catching t-shirts inspired by pop culture. Specifically cleverly themed t-shirts inspired by movies, video games, TV shows, comic books, geek culture, and much more are all on sale. To help keep our podcast free, order from Busted Tees by going to cspn.us. That's cspn.us. Then click on the Keep Our Podcast Free link. Click on the Busted Tees banner and then shop for awesome t-shirts. Busted Tees through cspn.us. Do it today. All right, and now we're going to transition into the news.
As I realized that I was talking, but the mute button was on. That's great. I
was about to say, I hope I got the sound in.
You did. I mean, that doesn't affect. Yeah. So as we do about this time, we're going to start off with the cinematic news. For some reason, didn't want to pop for me, but there we go. Starting with, of course, Captain Marvel just came out last week. Hope you really got a chance to watch it, or going to watch it soon. Brie Larson surprises fans on Saturday opening weekend.
Right, so apparently this was in like North Jersey.
Right.
And I had no idea.
Oh, nice. So, but you potentially could have been there had you gone.
Not really. It's one of those things where, it's not stupendously convenient. It's a drive away. It's multiple tolls away. But ultimately, when something like this that you kind of assume is going to happen in Cali or is going to happen somewhere else, you don't think it's going to be, anywhere near like a major metropolitan area. All of a sudden, she's in kind of like a suburban, not like a real suburban Jersey theater, but close enough.
I'm curious how they picked that, and where is she originally from? I guess that's a quick.
Yeah, that's a quick Google search. I was gonna say it's probably easy for her to go from there to maybe the airport without going back into the city. She can fly out of Newark.
Sure. Oh God, yeah.
Like I hate to think of it from the very pragmatic logistical sense. Kind of like, like imagine being like her travel planner or like Secret Service detail, like,
sure.
All right, what do we do now? How do we get from here to here without having to go all the way back into the city to get to JFK?
I've gone out of Newark before. I don't.
So.
No disrespect to juries, but that is a great airport. Anyhow, so yeah, and apparently she's from Sacramento, so I was kind of right that she was West Coast. That makes total sense. So yes, apparently she was. I saw the video of this, so which you could see that she was got a nice Captain Marvel inspired jumpsuit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, this is coming up. Well, I guess so. So you can see that if you're watching the video, which won't play all that great because yeah, we won't play the rest of that. But basically, yeah, she basically says, "Hey, thanks for coming out." And I think there was another picture of her. So if you're watching the video, you see she's holding a big ass thing of big ass soda.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she was by the popcorn machine in another.
Yeah, she was behind the counter, like helping to serve refreshments
So that's
between
cool.
movies.
Yeah, that's kind of neat. But yeah, and of course, given that I don't know if I put that in the lineup, but hey, guess what? No surprise, Captain Marvel did some numbers last weekend,
Mm-hmm.
and is poised to do so this weekend. So hey, go check that on out. Next up,
speaking of Captain Marvel, Brie Larson has a dance-off with Skrulls in a behind-the-scenes video. When I see BTS, I'm like, isn't that a K-pop group?
it is.
So when I saw BTS, I was thinking, really? But then I had to, just think, oh, this is probably a behind-the-scenes video, not a K-pop video, which would have been even funnier.
Actually, it's funny that you even made that reference. That's kind of funny. But yeah, so I assume this video may or may not going to end up on the upcoming Blu-ray. I don't know. I assume it is probably poised to be.
Mm-hmm. I would think so.
But yeah, you can check that out if if you're watching the video. There's a link to it. It's on Twitter. It's from the things_Marvel account, which I don't know. I assume that's a fan account or something. And yeah, this article goes in on like blah 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 blah. And it says, never mind. We need to go like that. There's a reference to Guardians of the Galaxy and another character therein.
Mm-hmm.
In that. So next up, Kevin Smith tearfully reacts to becoming part of the MCU. We alluded to this last week when we talked about Captain Marvel. We still will not necessarily spoil it.
Right. It's still too soon.
Yeah, still too soon. But yeah, so actually, you know what? Let me move away from that because if you can see the article, if you happen to see the article down in the thing, you will see it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Kevin Smith saw it. He liked it, and apparently that's an old picture because he doesn't look nothing like that now. After he lost his weight and his heart attack or whatnot, he looks weird. Anyway, so yeah, Kevin Smith was tearful and overjoyed. Needless to say.
Listen, he's become part of MCU canon.
Yes, exactly.
So that's a big deal.
Oh, and I think that article he also asked in the article, he's like, yeah, he's glad to be a part of the MCU, but wait, did he make it past the snap?
Right.
So, which was like, oh, I wonder. Next up.
So our next story is about why Nick Fury did or didn't page Captain Marvel sooner, according to straight from the mouth of Kevin Feige. So an enterprising reporter asked the strict question, the pretty serious question of why didn't this happen sooner? There's been so much happening in the MCU. Why didn't he call Captain Marvel down? And there's a couple of reasons that he gives. One is that most of the stuff that's been happening is local. This is global, if not universal.
Right.
And two, he also basically says, how do we know he didn't hit the button and something was going on with Carol that she couldn't answer? So we don't know. So, that's probably fertile ground for stories to be mined. So
I suppose, which I don't know if this is a counterpoint or not, but I was thinking, well, if that was the case, why would she show up for this then? Because maybe she's thinking, like, okay, he keeps calling us a prank. So why would she pick this one as opposed to any of those other times? If that was the case, but you can go all different kind of places with
exactly. It could be a timing thing for all we know. So ultimately, it was a good non-answer.
Basically, yeah. Like the first answer being was like, yeah, she could have been busy and couldn't make it, kind of would have. But at the same time, you could also, like I said, you can go places with that. It wouldn't add up one way or the other. Still on the Captain Marvel train. Captain Marvel's agent Coulson has a strong message for haters. And to which I say, I don't know if it's strong, but it's definitely one that's been oft used. So in the interview with Nerdist, Greg said, "I don't know if the expression is butthurt about seeing someone else get a hero that looks like them, but that's because they've always had heroes that look like them." And I kind of read that as sometimes we tend to say, or at least I tend to say, it's like, like the kids say, butthurt, even though he did not actually, say that.
Yeah.
But
I'm like, just remember that that Clark Gregg has actually been around for a while.
Exactly. So shout out to the new adventures of old Christine.
Sure.
But anyway, so yeah, and then he goes on to says, there are people that get very bent out of shape about the fact that she's a woman and that breeds a woman and wants to see women of the equal place in humanity to men. He continued, "It's sad. It must be sad to be that kind of dinosaur wandering towards the tar pits."
Mm-hmm.
So, and he goes on to give some praise about the movie and so good on Clark, Coulson, which still freaks me out looking at in the way they aged him in the movie. But it is what it is. Next
up, Patty Jenkins, the director of Wonder Woman, shared a message for the Captain Marvel crew. So Patty Jenkins put out on Twitter that she can't wait to see it, and the entire Wonder Woman crew wishes the Captain Marvel crew a great weekend. And it's that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Brie Larson responded on Twitter saying, "Thank you, sister." The comparisons almost can't be helped because these are the two first superhero movies helmed by female characters in the modern era. That's where the main comparison comes from.
But the problem is they've been pitted just like Black Panther in the past with every other movie that came around it. Like it's been pitted against each other as if there's only one of such movie should exist, whatever, and that's a problem.
Right. I don't mind them being compared because that's fair.
I kind of do combine because they're not necessarily that similar. Like, yeah, competing companies and they're both women. That's about it. And they're
right. But you can compare them as origin movies. But
sure.
The hardest comparison,
but that never happened.
The hardest comparison is that that Captain Marvel is part of such a big tapestry where Wonder Woman can basically exist on her own up until a certain point. And obviously, there's a lot more rancor, and I think that's what you're alluding to about, how the comparison is executed, and that's just people putting their own spin on things. But ultimately, it's a fair comparison to a certain extent, but getting beyond into different issues that sometimes aren't relevant.
Yes.
Kind of makes it a more difficult discussion than it should be. So, Captain Marvel is, they
can both exist.
Of course. What I was just gonna say, it's tough to. What I was gonna say, it's just tough to. It's tough to compare the two. From my point of view, because Captain Marvel has to service this entire continuity that comes independent of the character and also a very convoluted origin. Not that Wonder Woman doesn't have a convoluted origin.
Yeah, or you can kind of cut and drive that one a little bit more than
you can streamline that one a lot more easily, I think.
Yes.
So, but in any event, that's that's cool that that there's a friendly competition, nothing more.
Actually, it's not even. Yeah, well, in the case of this, it's not even competition. It's like, hey, everybody wants to see each other do good, and as a matter of fact, because and I guess, well, so there's been not just this, but there's been other people also, giving Sam well wishes, from Marvel side, because
Sure.
people like Denai Guerrera and Lupita Nyong'o also, giving their congratulations on the movie, and there's been a lot of that. It's good that we get to see a lot of that between movies. It's like one side of the competition would congratulate the other side for their movie, because I think there was a lot of that with Aquaman 2 from between
sure
between the two sides, and it's good to see that as opposed to, as you say, the rancor and all that kind of goes on. Anyway, let us move on. And let's see.
The big news of this week.
Yes, this happened today, actually. As we
It just dropped out of nowhere. No warning. People on their way to work on the East Coast.
Right. Yeah, because usually when this happens, we usually kind of have
there's something on Good Morning America. There's something in
or there's some teasing of it, right? There's some teasing of it, and what we're talking about, folks, is the Avengers Endgame's new trailer dropped today on the 14th of March. Good thing they didn't wait till tomorrow. They are to March,
right?
Introduces Captain Marvel to Thor and the Avengers, which that's kind of been played up a little bit too much because that's not even the whole thing of the.
That's just a little bit of it, right?
Yeah, and that's just a little bit at the end of it at that. Right. So, but I mean, it depends on who's the article you come across.
that we decide to kind of put up, but ultimately what we have is what I hope is the last trailer we get. We're probably gonna get one.
I think it is actually. I want to say they said as much.
Right. We may get one more, but I sincerely hope this is the last trailer we get, and I'm happy with it purely for one reason. And I understand that we've been told that these trailers won't go beyond the first like 20 minutes or so of the movie, which I love because I don't want to know. I don't want to be tuning out because I've done that before. I've tuned out trailers where I don't want to see any more of the movie until it's time for the movie. So I'm good. I'm good with this. Like, let's go.
Did you actually watch this one?
Yes. I've watched it a couple times and I've read a couple articles. So like I said, I'm happy because we're 2 months out. And like I said earlier, I'm hoping we don't get another one. You're saying that they've said that we're not going to get another one.
Well, I think there had been some allusions enough, and I can't remember if it. According to this,
right. But in any event, I figured this would be the last one I would watch anyway. So thinking that if there's one more, that's the one I'm going to avoid. So I mean, that's my standard operating procedure. So, but just getting to the trailer very quickly, there's a lot of it told in flashback, which is great. Like I said, nothing new, but it sets the stage for the high stakes of this movie and where these characters are. And I know some people aren't so jazzed that the OG Avengers team is kind of the ones that are getting ready for their last ride, but that's it's kind of that's kind of what this is leading up to.
Time had to come,
right?
But as you said, this starts off in flashbacks, which goes back to the beginning of the MCU itself, with specifically Iron Man and a couple other folks, and then just kind of builds up, and then gets that last, as this article says, meeting with Captain Marvel and Thor. So. But yeah, it was a pretty decent trailer. So you saw flashes of the Iron Man 1 and Captain America, the First Avenger, and Thor movies, which are the big three that started us all. And
you saw a little Civil War. You saw a little, you saw some real teases as to what might happen. You saw more of Hawkeye's new haircut.
Yeah, you definitely saw, because I know they were saying that in the last trailer there was some people cut out of a scene that they showed. They've been good about showing pretty much the same scene in the last couple of trailers, and I think they may have added at least one or two people in this trailer that they have digitally cut out of that one, I guess, or didn't show the part of, whatever the case may be. But nothing that would give up too much. That's we already know who's alive, so we know, they were bound to be in the same place at one point. With the exception of the one thing I guess could be spoiled in this, with speaking of one of the characters that starts out the trailer, that could be kind of a spoiler.
Right.
But again, it's 20 minutes of the movie, so whatever. Let us move on. What
if an alternate history of the Marvel Cinematic Universe? So this is a story.
Clickbait, but whatever. I put it here because I was like, that would be an interesting thing that we would do. So this is apparently again, speaking to Kevin Feige, or listening.
Oh, with like the recasting, right, with the different directions that the movies would have taken if the actors had been cast differently.
Right. Like, what if we had
yeah, what if Terrence Howard had stayed on as James Rhodes? I mean,
so glad that didn't happen.
We would have heard a lot more Maine.
God, I really didn't. I'm not crazy about Rhodes, but I didn't like him as Rhodey because he was more whiny than anything.
Yeah, because it's like, when am I going to get my shot? Why are you messing with my testing?
Right. Come on, mate. There was no Maine. That's a funny thing. That's funny.
So, you know, and also if Ed Norton had been able to stay on as opposed to Ruffalo's portrayal,
which probably a trade up. I mean, I like that I like that Hulk movie, but you know, I heard, you know,
right. You know, if Emily, yeah,
kind of difficult.
Emily, oh, I'm sorry. I was about to say if Emily Blunt had been able to stay on as Black Widow,
right,
which would have been interesting and would have made her a lot taller, I think.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
You know, and the one that I just can't abide is John Krasinski as Captain America.
Yeah.
I know the dude can get really ripped. You know,
I mean, I still can't really buy him as Jack Ryan, and I didn't even watch really that the thing on Amazon, but I'm like, I'm not seeing it.
Right. That's the funny part. Like, you know, you didn't really buy. I mean, based on body of work, I can understand why people would have been hesitant to see Chris Evans as Captain America. But once you saw it, you're like, yeah, that works. So, you know, that's you know, that's a what if that we don't have to worry about, thankfully.
And apparently Tom Hiddleston could have been Thor, which
that would have been hysterical,
right? Yeah. But you know, hey, look, again,
that would have taken some serious CGI.
Yeah, that's probably it. But I mean, hey, they did well. Actually, they didn't do it that much for. Well, they did it in the opposite direction for the Chris, for the other Chris. But yeah, that would have been quite weird. And apparently Daniel Craig, which wow, that would have been an older looking Thor. I'm glad. Oh wait, Loki wasn't no. Oh, I'm sorry. Daniel Craig would have been Loki, which
would have been weird.
Yeah, I'm glad they didn't do that because I can't.
Yeah, that just would have.
Probably can't see that. But anyway, yeah. So that's that. And for some strange reason, I keep mixing up the guy who plays Shazam, Jonathan Levi, with John Krasinski. Or wait.
Oh, Zachary Levi.
Zachary Levi. Thank you. I keep mixing them two up. I don't know why. Let's move on.
I was about to say, just remember, dude from The Office.
Yeah. Well, I never watched Office, but yeah.
Neither did I so much, though.
But yeah, I know who, you know, that it was a thing. So here's some news that I don't know if you saw.
I did see this.
Marvel sets Shang-Chi as its first Asian superhero film. I think we may have seen rumblings of this in the past month or two, but apparently it's a thing that is actually happening.
Right, because now they've made concrete moves. For long time fans of the MCU, you have to remember that Shang-Chi was one of the characters that actually set out was set forth by Marvel Studios as a character, you know, to pitch for potential movie series when they got their financing.
Rumor has it could have been a movie around the time of Blade, or maybe I'm making that up, but
I'm not sure.
Yeah, like there could have potentially been a movie around that time.
What's funny is that I guess, you know, the precedent has been set for characters who aren't as super powered to have vehicles in the cinematic universe.
And the bigger thing in this issue are people of color.
Right. No, but you know,
I know what you're saying, but yeah,
right, exactly. You know, and I definitely understand that. But it's, you know, what you're trying to figure out is how does this character fit in a universe where there's literal demigods running around and billionaires with suits of armor that can go into space. But
Right.
figure out that there is a space for this character, because even though Captain America is still not the same, that's close, and now they're working on a Black Widow movie as well. So there is room in the MCU for the more human level characters.
Which, yeah, because they have pretty much relegated at this point more street level characters to the Netflix series.
Sure.
And I'm actually slightly surprised that they didn't go that route with this. But given what we know now and all those other ones that got canceled, we know why now. But
right. Right. So it's interesting to see how they kind of incorporate him into the MCU.
Right.
That's really, I mean, that's, and I definitely understand that. Yeah, this I hate to say that this checks off another box.
Yeah, but that was the first thing I thought, and unfortunately,
it's an important box. It's an important box to check.
Yep.
And my hope is that they're able to get enough perspectives on this so that they don't make any real mistakes. They obviously don't want to alienate the Chinese market.
They don't want to do that. Let this not be an iron fist.
So.
That being said, there's actually other news in this, and that there's a director that has been hired, Destin Daniel Cretton, to direct MCU's first Asian-led movie.
Right, and if his name doesn't strike you as being Asian, apparently he at least has some, he at least has some lineage.
Right. If
from
you're
the looks of the picture, right? From the looks of his picture.
Yep. And I don't know the directing credits that they are putting him under, but hey.
What's funny is that I remember reading some of his credits, and he's actually directed Brie Larson in a couple of things, and he's also he's also like smaller films, and he's also worked with Ryan Coogler on something recently, like a TV show. So he's definitely got connections to the MCU.
All right, that's well, that's what happens. You use the connections when you got them. So good on them. So hopefully it works out.
Alrighty. Speaking of, I was about to say. Speaking of, I'll take this one since we incorporated the last two together. Emma Watson tops the shortlist for Black Widow's second lead in the movie. Not like the crazy people who thought they were going to recast Emma Watson in Scarlett Johansson's place, because there's crazy people that don't read.
Yeah, I saw that stuff. I'm like, wait, what's wrong with you folks?
They just don't read.
Granted, that said, though, it'd be different stories. Like, okay, I'm sure ScarJo's, contract is probably about up, just like with the other.
Well, she started later. That's the thing. She started with Iron Man 2.
Yes.
So,
but I think her contract would still be about to be close up for these movies,
right? Because she's been in the Cap movies as well,
right?
So,
but I still was like, well, I don't know if they would just recast like that. I mean, unless I don't know, they I don't know, strange things have happened. But that was like,
well, ultimately, we all know. I was about to say, ultimately, we all know that she should be on board for the Black Widow solo movie,
right?
So seeing Hermione Granger as her opposite is a little weird, but then what we have to understand is that we don't know what the story is, 1, and 2. That's actually not out of the realm of possibility that the if the story is Red Room based, that there's a younger version of the Black Widow being sent after her. So,
and I'm pretty certain they're between the last miniseries that I remember reading with her, not that Tales of Suspense one, but from a couple years ago. I'm pretty sure would probably be or her series that her last series that ended like a couple of years ago probably has some prime story that could work.
Sure.
We definitely know that there are stories that could be told with the Black Widow.
And even based just on what they've already established in the MCU. We'll finally find out what happened in Budapest, right?
Exactly.
So
that's the one I want to know about.
Right. So ultimately, we that's also some fertile ground for them to mine. So that's pretty. It's cool that Emma Watson is while still being genre is branching out into something else.
Yeah. And will she be casting spells? We don't know.
We don't know.
Expelliarmus. Anyway, next.
No. Speaking of casting spells.
Yes. Nice. Doctor Strange 2 director may have just teased Namor, whose interest into the MCU might have been up to there for different reasons, because depending on. So I know there has been. What am I trying to say?
I'm not sure.
We don't know, but we don't know. Well, we vaguely knew where the rights to Namor laid down. Put it that way,
right?
Because he has been a part of Fantastic Four. He's been a part of Mutants.
I think he's got a separate distribution deal, to be honest.
Exactly, and so that was kind of up in the air. So I guess they may have hashed that out,
right,
with some of the other stuff. If they're talking about this,
my understanding is that he was with Universal. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of like one of the rogue agreements that was out there, that wasn't kind of all like covered under the umbrella of like the Fox deal or the Sony deal,
right? Which is part of why it came back, because I think obviously if you don't use it, you lose it,
right? So I mean, it all depends on what the terms of the contract was, but this is an interesting way to introduce the character. It's making it more defenders based as opposed to invaders based,
right?
Given the fact that while we're all sure that the OG MCU characters, unless they're like killed, even if they are killed off, can come back because it's a payday, to make a cameo, to make Namor invaders based, but why not make him defenders based?
And it could be, I mean, just like they've done with Captain America and Captain Marvel, it could be a time period thing.
Sure.
Although, if it's coming by way of Doctor Strange, that still could happen. So, in this article, they're saying there was a tweet by Scott Derrickson, who's directing the next Doctor Strange movie, and there was a now deleted tweet that shared an image from the cover of 2011's Fear Itself: The Deep. Depicting Doctor Strange and Namor, which was accompanied by the text, "Are you experienced?" which is a Jimi Hendrix song. The experience.
I love that. I love that he had to delete the tweet. Kevin Feige probably sent the assault team after him.
Right, I know, right? It was like, hey, what you doing?
I love, like the actors, the MCU actors that go on talk shows are like, there might be a Marvel ninja in the audience somewhere. So I'm not going to say anything. So
hey, we ain't said nothing. We haven't nailed that down yet. Just delete that. Go. What are you doing? So anyway, yeah, it could be a thing, or maybe it's calculated. It was like, hey, just put it out there to put the feelers out, and that happens. That's going to happen. But regardless, it's something to think about.
All right. So speaking of something that may be alive but shouldn't be,
yes, Schrodinger's cat.
Right. Noah Hawley's Doctor Doom film over at 21st Century Fox might not be dead in the wake of the merger that is set to close.
Yes, fairly soon, actually.
Very soon.
I think by this month, they're saying.
I think earlier.
Really?
The date that I saw was earlier, like in the 20s.
It could have been. Yeah. Well, still by the end of this month. But,
before the end of the month.
Yeah.
But because when I hear by the end of the month, I'm like, well, I don't think it may go to all the way to March 31st. But in any event, so apparently, whatchamacallit, at South by Southwest, Hawley told the Hollywood Reporter that Kevin Feige approached him about the Doctor Doom movie. Feige asked him if he was still working on it, to which he replied, "Should I be working on it?" But he didn't spill as to what Feige's response was. So we don't know what that means, you teasing bastard.
Yeah, and it's just as well that I don't know if that project needs to live or not. I don't know. Can't really say.
Go away.
I mean, you could do some things with a Doctor Strange movie. Hell,
Doctor Doom.
Doctor Doom. That's what I meant. Sorry.
Right. But you gotta I don't know. I still feel
Do
like
you? Because they, yeah, I'm about to say, I know what you're about to say, but they have glossed over and changed some things in the MCU big time. So they,
right, but you still don't think that they would have to be introduced together with the FF,
I mean,
even though they've done it twice already and they've screwed it. It's been screwed up.
Venom didn't. But you can say what you want about that movie in itself. So
let's not even get into that one.
Yeah, let us move on. Yeah, I don't know.
Next up.
Oh yeah, matter of fact, we can tie both of these together. DuckTales finally reveals what happened to Donald Duck's sister Della. So this was a long-standing mystery in the annals of DuckTales. Ooh. Which again, she had been. Yeah, it's like this has been the thing that's like, okay, Donald's got a sister, or because he clearly has 3 nephews that came from somewhere. So, and now we finally get to find out what the mystery is about. I am not caught up on DuckTales. I know she's also shown up in the comic book retelling. I mean, there's comic book version of DuckTales, including starting off with the book, but but that was like flashbacks and stuff. So I don't know if they actually. I don't even know if the show is that closely tied to the book. It may probably be. I don't know. Regardless, we found out what happened to her.
Mm-hmm.
Which brings us to, and apparently this was a double episode. So, and I'm wondering.
Right.
You
want me to, I was about to say, I thought you were going to do the other DuckTales one.
Yeah, I will. Yeah. Which brings us to, in the same episodes, DuckTales just gave the Moon theme real lyrics. Now, if you did not know, there was back in the 90s a video game based off of DuckTales. Based off of yes, based off the animated the original animated. So it was done. It was a Capcom made joint, and it was Uncle Scrooge going around
fighting the Street Fighters. No, I'm kidding.
That would be hilarious if it was, though. They should put him in Marvel vs. Capcom. Anyway, hey, look, with that cane, he'd be OP. But anyway, but it was a platformer. Lots of people know about it. It's a classic game. I think they've remade it a couple of times. I'm pretty sure there's a version out there you can find that you can play. In fact, I know there is. But regardless, one of the stages was the moon, and of course, the moon had music. To which they incorporated into the episode of DuckTales that we were just talking about, and they gave it lyrics. So, which means that you can kind of say that the video game is canon. You may say.
Okay.
And just to spoil a little bit about what happened in the episode, the part of which is where we find Della Duck, or where she ends up on the moon some kind of way, and apparently some of that even plays out like not necessarily plays out like, but there's a couple more references to the video game that come out of that. If you never played DuckTales video games, you play it. It's pretty cool. It's kind of still holds up. So yeah, so that's the thing, and it had people freaking out because a lot of people like that stage and the music they're in. Moving right along.
Alrighty, so there is a report as pre-production ramps up on James Gunn's softish reboot of the Suicide Squad movie. There's a report that the film's going to take its influences from a classic run on the series in the 1980s by John Ostrander and Kim Yale. It features Deadshot and Rick Flag in central roles with a rotating cast of supporting characters. Let's see. It doesn't actually mention what those characters might be in this article, but I've seen some articles that mention King Shark and so on and so forth.
Yeah, because we talked about that last week. So yeah, I'm not familiar with runs of Suicide Squad. I'll take their word for it.
It might be worth going back to seeing if if trades are going to be available soon on that.
on DC Universe. They're probably
Universe or just in hard copies.
Yeah, there probably is. I know there's some stuff on there, but I don't know. I couldn't tell you one way or the other if it's iconic or not. Anyway, the Flash star Grant Gustin reacts to the Arrow ending. So still other people reacting to the fact that hey, Arrow's going away.
Right.
Which, hey, if it wasn't for Arrow, you wouldn't be the Flash. So
true.
And speaking of, I'll go ahead and take this one too while we're at it. Arrow's Felicity Smoke, love her, reacts to the show ending. Emily Beck Rickards, who plays Felicity Smoke, has her own reaction. Basically, she has her things. So one of the best parts about that show. Next
up, Batman fights the Shredder in DC's first Batman versus Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles trailer.
Yep, possibly. Now we do know there's been 3 crossovers. Well, there's 2 crossovers and another one coming, I think. But this is possibly retelling of the first one.
Okay,
I'm not sure. I don't know if it says here, but regardless, hey, it's a thing and it's coming. Let's see. DC Entertainment and Nickelodeon has teamed up to produce the film, which is based on Batman Teenage Mutant Ninja, like I said. So yeah, it's probably the first one. The story will see the Turtles meeting Batman via transdimensional encounter and feature our heroes teaming up to face Batman's deadly rogues gallery. I never read that crossover.
I was about to say it's interesting that it's a mix of DC continuity, because from what I can see on the page, without looking at the trailer, looking at some of the stills, it looks like Batman is wearing his 80s costume, which is like a blue and gray with the yellow bat symbol on his chest. But the Batgirl is wearing the latest costume from the 2016 or 17 reboot.
Right. So yeah, so this is basically I guess if you were put it in perspective, the Batman was it Brave and Bold the way he was? Yeah. The animated version of Brave and Bold, I should specifically saying, but also the 80s run, but with the mixing of like you said, Batgirl's current suit, and I guess that's is that Damian's suit? Because you see down at the bottom, there's a picture of him, the Turtles, and Batgirl and Robin.
Oh, I didn't look so closely at that.
And that kind of looks like, now granted, one Robin suit looks relatively the same as other, and
yeah, but there's little tweaks that really differentiate them.
Exactly,
especially with the darker tones.
But this either looks like Damian's suit and or a Teen Titans version.
Let's see. Bottom of the yeah, it's got a hood. It might be Damian.
Yeah,
it looks like a hood, right?
Possibly. It doesn't necessarily come out as much, but because you've seen that cape kind of similarly, but I don't know. Anyway, that's enough about that. It's coming. When is it coming? Soon. The spring, actually. Yeah, it says. Next up, how did Shazam 2 weeks before everyone else? So apparently Fandango is offering advanced screenings of Shazam 2 weeks ahead of April 5th release date, that should be like soon.
Yeah.
So that'll be next week. That's the case. So this is for exclusive to members of Fandango's VIP rewards program, which means that's pretty much anybody who's signed up for Fandango. Because they will, hey, if you stand up for Fandango, go put you in this other thing also. So yeah, so it seems kind of similar to what Amazon did, and I think it even says here, the Amazon thing with Aquaman they did last year.
The early access would be March 23rd.
Yeah. So that, again, yeah.
I just opened my Fandango app to see.
Yeah, it also says in this article that that it's going to be that. It's going to be 1,200 North American theaters, and like I said, exclusive to Fandango. So I'm pretty sure anybody, and this has been a couple of days out, so a couple of days old. So I'm pretty sure anybody who's done it. I haven't done it yet, but I don't know.
It's showing near me.
It's probably showing near me, I'm sure, but I just never checked the app. I didn't check the app. So we'll see. It might be an early movie protocol, may not be. We'll see.
Wait, what day is the 23rd fall on? It's a Friday.
That is is that? Oh yeah,
Oh, no, it's a Saturday. It's a Saturday.
So
yeah, so no need.
So yeah, no need for movie protocol on that one. Still be early, like it did, but regardless, it's a thing. Go check it out if you're a Fandango member. Of apparently, which both of us apparently are.
That's not a surprise, given
it really isn't.
Yeah, given how we're all trying to get our tickets ahead of time and not worry about the box office. So
yeah,
I mean,
you had to go through Adam for the Aquaman thing and not Fandango, but still, it's a similar.
Next up, DC Universe's Titans has cast Deathstroke for season 2. So the actor Esai Morales, who is known for his roles as Lieutenant Tony Rodriguez in NYPD Blue and Camino del Rio in Ozark, has been enlisted to play the role of Slade Wilson, Deathstroke, in the upcoming second season of Titans.
And there's been other articles. I mean, other articles mention other stuff that he's, but that name is if you've been around a while, you know that name.
Sure, I definitely remember him from NYPD Blue. So
yep.
And it looks like he's going gray, so they won't have to do too much to transform the hair.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, that's probably a good pick. He's a pretty good actor. Next up, actually, there's some sad news, but we'll get to that in a second. That's not comic related, but we'll bring it up anyway. KLIQ teases the Joker's new animated look. So, KLIQ is the voice of Harley Quinn in that series that's going to be on DC Universe at some point this year. And apparently here we have a picture that she snapped on her Instagram with a package of red vines, proving she has no. No, I'm just kidding. Stop.
Oh no!
I'm kidding. I don't think I've ever actually even had red vines.
That's just another name for Twizzler, right?
I know, but yeah, there are some people who like red vines are better than Twizzlers. I'm like, all right, if you say so.
They're not the same thing.
They are technically the same thing.
Goodness gracious!
But I think they may have different texture tastes or something. I don't know. I don't even care because I'm not a big Twizzler fan anyway. Regardless, her in studio booth, and there's a picture of the animated version that she is playing, and also with the Joker, who's being played by, again, Wash, aka Alan Tudyk of Firefly fame. So yeah, there you go. That's the thing. It's coming sometime this year, October.
All right. Next up, the Picard series from Star Trek has added has added actors from the TV series Heroes and Daredevil as series regulars.
Because sometimes they wait. Did you just
yeah. No, apparently Siri thought I was talking to her.
Oh, nice. Starving for attention. Nice, Siri. So according to Variety, Santiago Cabrera and Michelle Hurd, who I know that name from the Daredevil, and I think she was also in Jessica Jones, one of those other series, if I'm not mistaken. She's shown up there as well as a couple other places. But yeah. So they're mining other spots of similar genres. And apparently Michael Dorn has expressed interest as saying he would be open to be on the show. And poor Michael Dorn, because he's been trying to get that Worf series off the ground, which will probably never happen. And now they got this Picard series.
I mean, to a certain extent, he had, like a primary role on DS9 for a while.
True, but since then, like even while he was still on, DS9, it was like, yeah, it's possible that could have been a Captain Worf show or something.
Yeah.
That was probably never going to happen. Which, at this point, who knows?
Kaplock.
Exactly.
So
next up, last but not least, not necessarily comic news, but hey, comic related, let's just say, because I don't know if it was actually.
People of a certain vintage will recognize that music.
Wait, I thought that was Challenge of the Super Friends, but yes, you're right. Battle of because it is definitely a similar music to Challenge of the Superman, not Super Friends, because that probably was done by the same people. But yes, Gotcha Man, aka Science Ninja Team, Gotcha Man, aka Battle of the Planets. If you are of a certain vintage, aka G-Force, also
Right.
is a certain vintage.
Not the hamsters.
Definitely not the hamsters. Good God, no.
That's some people stuff, man.
Yes, Gotcha Man concept art for Imagi's unproduced film is absolutely gorgeous. So there is outside of the fact that, hey, I am a fan, and I think Agent 70 may be also a fan of
just a little.
Yeah, G-Force, because grew up on it. Like that Science Ninja Team, Gotcha Man, which I'm trying to remember where it plays because I kind of want to watch some now. But anyway, so the artwork that is being shown here that's not being used for the film, as you can see in the, I feel like I've seen this poster, this picture before. Come from a Magic Studios. Was shared on Instagram by artist and former Marvel Studios head of visual development Charlie Wynn, who created the designs. So looks dope. There's Fiery Phoenix. There's June the Swan. There's Ken. There's all those jokers. Now I want to go watch some Gotcha Man. Thanks very much. I did that to myself. Let's be honest, because even when I saw this, I was like, oh man, I'm not even sure if it's on Crunchyroll. Anyway, that is it for the cinematic news. Before we go into the comic book news, really quickly, Rep Jan Michael Vincent, who apparently died a couple of days ago, like a week ago.
A while ago. He died in February, and what ended up happening is that, unbeknownst to to everyone who kind of follows celebrity news, he passed away, and it just sort of went, he sort of went away quietly. He died in some smaller hospital in some, what part of the country was it?
Wait, I thought it said, I don't know if it says here. Oh, he was living here in South Carolina.
Yeah, I was going to say he wasn't near like a big metropolitan area, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I mean, to be fair, South Carolina there's only a couple of metropolitan, and I'm in one of them. So that's not really saying much in South Carolina, not that big of a state. Which I feel like I don't. Anyway, regardless, so yeah, he was 73 at the time of his death, and he had a cardiac arrest, and I didn't recognize the fact that he was living here, which probably wouldn't have made any difference. But so if the name's not familiar, Jan Michael Vincent, if you're of a certain vintage again, was the lead actor of a little show called Airwolf, which had to do with let's say a crime fighting helicopter. It was actually a movie. It was a movie that ended up being turned into a TV series. And I'm fairly certain I remember this correctly. He ended up leaving the show. They killed off his character, I think, going into the next season, because I think either he wanted too much money or something happened. I don't remember what the case was, but regardless, yeah. So
I mean, he was on a hunt for his brother. Finds his brother, who's like a MIA in Vietnam.
He was Stringfellow. I think he played Stringfellow Hawk,
right?
And his brother, whatever it was, which I think, matter of fact, I think when they killed off his character, they basically found his brother, who ended up taking over.
Exactly, like his brother's name was Sinjin.
Sinjin Hawk, yes,
exactly. It's basically Saint John Hawk, but called him Sinjin.
Right.
And kudos to the writers for coming up with these names.
Right. I think that's a Dick Wolf joint, wasn't it?
Probably.
Donald Belisario, which is a name, if you've watched TV back in the 80s, you would that name all over stuff.
Sure.
And I think there was actually an Airwolf comic book.
Oh yeah, there was.
Yeah, and
there absolutely was.
Yeah.
All those 80s properties got comics at some point. So
sure. This is not without some kind of relevance to us, but still one way or the other.
Right, but this is pop culture of the 80s. This is definitely some comic-ish, genre-ish stuff. So I was very sad to see that. that he had kind of gone away and passed away without much, not that anyone passes away with fanfare, but without any recognition.
Well, he also kind of later had a couple of issues,
right?
As this article says here, because I do remember some of that stuff about, like, yeah, he kind of had some alcohol related things going on and whatever. So,
right. And, at the end of the day, it wasn't working. So we hadn't really seen him in a long, long time.
Right. And he comes to South Carolina to die, which anyway, sorry. Anyway, but yeah, so that's that. So Rip Jan Michael Vincent. And also I want to bring apart, of course, as we do every week, we have clickbait section, which if the show notes should be in I've been putting the show notes in the post, so you should be able to click on that. A couple of notes from that, and Idris Elba, which I think we talked about, maybe possibly not, but he hosted Saturday Night Live, and apparently there was a skit where he becomes the Impossible Hulk, where he turns into he gets mad and turns into a white lady, a la Permit Patty and Backyard Betty types, if you know those memes. So I haven't seen the skit, but it sounds like it was interesting. Also, there's an article about Kelly Sue DeConnick, whose run of Captain Marvel has been cinematized. And as you can see, there's a picture of her and her lovely family, including one Matt Fraction.
Right at the premiere, I think.
At the premiere, yes. And of course, there's an article about what she's been doing and her getting back into her creator of her own stuff and talking about Captain Marvel in general. Apparently, and she's also, she hasn't left comics because she's doing Aquaman now, which is her starting to get back into the her comic grooves, because her and her husband was doing like television stuff a little bit, which I think they're also still kind of doing. But yeah, check out that article. And then there's another article about Clark Gregg, which is Clark Gregg opens up about his deep connection with Agent Coulson, because at this point you can't hard to distinguish one from the other. I think he says that in that article. So now we go into the comic book news. Okay, we start off with, I do that every time, I know. Green Arrow relaunch reset coming from DC. I guess that's not so big a surprise. So
it happens a lot.
Yes. So yeah, last week's Green Arrow 450 was the last of that run by, was it I guess was it well, I would say friends of the show, but I think we've had him on the show, Colin Kelly and oh Lord, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Jackson Lansing. I think we did have them on the show.
Yeah, for a creator owned.
Yes, we did. And they were writing that book,
Joyride, I think it was.
Joyride, exactly, was Joyride, actually. Thank you. You have a great memory. Because I totally couldn't remember. So yeah, they were on the book until this to end of this, and like I said, no surprise, they're going to relaunch. They're probably going to relaunch Green Arrow. They're wondering who's going to be on the book at this point. So, but that's the thing.
Alrighty. Next up, an Aquaman scene from the movie, I guess, has been recreated in 16-bit animation, and it washes over like a wave of nostalgia.
So yeah, apparently some fan folks took that one chase scene, the one in Aquaman scene, in Aquaman movie, and made it into a 16-bit video game, or at least a demo for one anyway. So cool, and you can see the video for that in this article. Next up, first look at Green Lantern Legacy, which is a graphic novel for, I believe, is DC's Zoom line, which is their this is their young adult imprint, their middle grade imprint, and this is basically a graphic novel about the first Asian Green Lantern, Teen Green Lantern at that, which there is also a Teen Green Lantern in the pages of Young Justice. That's a totally different thing. But yes, so this is called Green Lantern Legacy, and it marks the first time that an Asian American has become the Green Lantern.
Okay.
I feel like that's not true, and I have nothing that will substantiate that. So I'm
I
just
would
gonna
hate I would hate that DC has gone forward with this copy and it's not true.
right. Well, I mean, this is from
Oh, this is from the Zoom middle grade imprint. Okay.
right. And again, this is from the School Library's journal. Hey,
Mhm.
remember weekly readers? I used to love those, but anyway, that was when I was reading more heavily than that. That's off topic. So the story goes like this: 13-year-old Ty Pham lives in an apartment above his grandmother's store, where his bedroom is crammed with sketch pads and comic books. So it already sounds like Kyle Rayner. But not even his most imaginative drawings could be compared to the colorful adventure he's about to embark on. When Ty inherits his grandmother's jade ring, he soon finds out that it's more than it appears. So apparently his grandmother was a lantern. That's basically what that sounds like. And he's inducted to a group of space counselors, yada 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 yada. So basically, hey, this is a young adult read. Oh, check out Grandma with the lantern ring.
And if you scroll down, apparently Jon Stewart makes an appearance.
Oh, nice. So yeah, you scroll down. If you're watching the video, you can check out and see some pages from the book. The creative team is Min Lei and illustrated by Andy Tong. So it's an Asian creative team also. So that's pretty cool.
Nice.
Yeah. I don't know. Does it say when this is coming out? I don't see it. Or it probably says so here. But regardless, it's probably, I think it's soon though, if I'm not mistaken, but it doesn't, I don't see it here. So there you go. That's that. And next, speaking of young adults.
Yeah, I was about to say, speaking of the Zoom imprint, we're now going to talk about there's more details on the preteen Wonder Woman title coming in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not, around the corner, but it's a little while away. But DC Zoom is going to put out Diana, Princess of the Amazons original graphic novel.
Yeah, apparently this was announced last year, so I don't even know if we talked about it then. But yeah, and it says here, cut off from the rest of the world, Diana had a idyllic childhood under mascara, but now the 11-year-old, she's beginning to feel more and more isolated. Though she has many aunties, quote unquote, and a loving mother, she's an only child. The only child, in fact, according to the description. So yeah, this is being written by Shannon and Dean Hale and drawn by Victoria Yang, and of course, like we said already, it's going to come out January 2020.
Okay.
So I'm actually slightly curious about checking out a couple of these books, even though they're not for me.
Sure.
But I don't know. We'll see come closer to the time. Next up, DC Dark Horse announces Justice League Black Hammer crossover. I saw this on Twitter yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So Jeff Lemire who writes the Black Hammer and has written for DC and Marvel. Is going to do a crossover with his Dark Horse book. Like I said, Black Hammer. This is going to be a 5-issue miniseries, and I've never read Black Hammer. I have no idea what it's about, but hey, it's another crossover, folks. So, and I think that's fairly soon since they're announcing this. Yeah, it goes on sale July 10th. So look out for that if you are a fan of Justice League and or Black Hammer. If you know what that is. Next.
All right, so the lowdown on Marvel Comics' new Filipina superhero Wave. So this is a character that's going to be introduced in the pages of the Agents of Atlas book that's coming out of War of the Realms.
Right, which we talked about that book, I think probably last week or week before last.
Right, so...
this character was.
So. Right, so Lionel Yu helped design the character. He's Filipino. Mm-hmm. And... it's cool that Greg Pak and Lionel Yu put their heads together to come up with this character. The character is conceived by Greg Pak, and he designed what the character looks like, and it's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. So look forward to that when that happens. No longer the Protectors. Marvel demands adaptation or dominance with mysterious teaser image, which I think came out yesterday. So Marvel has released an ominous teaser image that could spell trouble for the household ideas of heroes and villains. For some strange reason, I keep thinking there's going back to what I said last week about Secret Invasion, but that may or may not be it. Anyway, this image is a simple blank sheet of white paper with typewriter-like text that reads, "When two aggressive species share the same environment, evolution demands adaptation or dominance." So we have no clue as to what that'd be about, but this article goes into some speculation dealing with X-Men business. There was also another tweet, as a matter of fact, which is where I saw it, from a person on Twitter whom I think is an artist. No, it's a comic person. I mean, it's a writer or something, I guess, who basically said Hickman's coming. And I don't know if that was speculation or some inside knowledge that went along with this tweet. But, you know, that kind of sounds like something Hickman-esque.
Yeah. That'd be funny if Hickman came back to Marvel like that.
Right? So, but we'll see. You know, we have nothing on it at this point because it just happened. Next up,
Mike Deodato is leaving Marvel after a run on Savage Avengers. So my understanding is that he's got a brief run and he's going to leave Marvel for creator-owned work after 24 years. Unreal.
Yeah, right.
My understanding is that he's going to do some more con appearances this year to help promote that. So if you got anything you want signed, guess what? You may want to try to track him down.
There you go. Oh man, I'm kind of disappointed. I might not be able to go to the Heroes this year. Kind of bummed by that. But we'll see how that works out. Stay tuned, folks. Paper Girls finale is like saying goodbye to a childhood friend, and I believe out of anyone on this panel, Tim was the only one actually reading that book.
I think so.
None of us knows that much about this book, but basically the final arc of Brian K. Vaughan, Cliff Chang, and Matt Wilson's Paper Girls begins with this week's, which I think was last week's, issue number 26, culminates in July with a double-sized number 30, and all will be explained according to Chang.
So I guess if you're looking to catch up, now's the time.
Right. So I feel like this was probably, I don't know, I may be wrong, but this might have been like into a Stranger Things type situation. I could be deadly wrong about that, but we're not going to go about that. Look, if Tim was on the show, he'd know probably more about it if he's kept up with it. Next up, Salty Sailors and Zombie Dinosaurs in a new book called Lady Redbeard. So this is not beard, though.
What's that?
Nothing. Don't worry about it. It was a dumb joke.
Oh, well, I can only imagine. So apparently it's part of a larger story. It's a first volume of Spicy Pulp Comics. So hey, if you guys are into that,
never heard of
it.
Sure. Next up, speaking of rising from your grave, like someone on Easter or the Phoenix or something. Hey, remember we talked about that book, Second Coming, that was supposed to be a DC that Mark Russell was writing, but they canceled it because of uproar. Well, it is coming. It finds a new publisher under the guise of Ahoy Comics, which is a comic company I have seen before, but I have no idea. I don't even think we even get any books from them. So yeah, that book is getting life under a new publisher, so probably not going to be integrated into the DC universe like it initially was supposed to. It's written by Mark Russell of Wonder Twins, Flintstones, etc., all those, and drawn by Richard Price, and again, like I said, published by Ahoy Comics and still coming out this summer. And if you did not know, Jesus has a superstar roommate named Sunstar and learns what has become of his gospel on the earth, which is probably slightly different from what it initially was with DC, but nevertheless.
Yeah. Okay. All right,
Yeah.
next up, someone didn't exactly read the crowd correctly. An alt-right author was skewered, was skewered online by asking what Stan Lee would think of the current state of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Right.
And
'Cause it's not like Stan Lee has not been a part of said universe.
yeah, he only just died.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
everything that we're seeing now, he actually still had a hand in.
Right. And has actually come out and said, how he felt about the MCU. So this crackpot just wanted some attention and he got it.
Yep.
And again, he's one of those comics great alt-right dumbasses.
Look at me.
Yeah.
The we say about them, the better.
Yeah, exactly. But that's a name that we bring it up so you can stay away from them.
Yep.
Including the rest of those clowns.
Yep.
eBay partners with Simone and Staggs for a female superhero store. So Gail Simone and Kat Staggs and eBay are starting up a female superhero-centric online store called Superheroine HQ. The store plans to offer thousands of comic books, collectibles, merchandise, including 8-point CGC Wonder Woman #1, which I'm pretty sure that's what it's probably Gail Simone's run. A 9.9 Ms. Marvel #1 signed by Stan Lee. And actually, I don't know if that Wonder Woman was whatever, because we don't know what it is. But regardless, and
there's a link, so you can follow that link to the store.
Exactly. And include an eBay exclusive variant cover of Captain Marvel Braver and Mightier, which just came out like last month or so, something like that, or this month. Anyway, so yeah, you can go check that out and see what that's all about.
Yeah, that Ms. Marvel issue that Roddy Cat was referring to is not Kamala, but the first Carol solo Ms. Marvel book.
And the Woman is definitely not what I said it was. It looks like it's from the 60s or something.
Yeah, this is pretty old.
Yeah, and going for a lot.
That's pretty old. That is published. I'm looking for when that's published.
So there's a couple of vintage things, vintage comics that are there.
That is summer of 1942.
Yes. So yes, that's
pretty old.
Yeah, and there's some other stuff here. There's there's a Spider-Woman Alpha. There's a bunch of figurines and whatnot. So there's a lot of stuff you can get, which is cool. It's dope.
Sure. I mean, anything like this that kind of streamlines the process helps.
Yeah,
you're looking for something specific.
Exactly, especially if you are a collector, who can't seem to find them in your local stores because of one reason or another.
Mm-hmm.
There is that. So cool beans. Before this autoplay thing starts, Jedi Fallen Order scheduled for Star Wars Celebration. So Celebration. Respawn is ready to reveal its next game. So what? Oh, I thought you said something.
Nope.
So yeah, Jedi Fallen Order's next game is Respawn Entertainment, aka the folks what gave you Titanfall and Titanfall 2, aka the same folks who made Apex Legends, which is a big game now, and of course, former Call of Duty, the devs. So their pedigree is already out there, and they're doing a Star Wars game. I'm just going to assume it's going to be a first-person shooter. I'm just going to put that out there.
Okay.
It would be out of the ordinary if it wasn't, although it'd be something different. So that would be also cool for Respawn to do this. But hey, their pedigree is first-person shooters, so you go with what you know. By the way, Apex Legends, pretty good game for one of those games. So anyway, so yeah, that's it. And like I said, Star Wars Celebration, which is coming up April 11th through the 15th. There should be there, but we won't. Next.
Our last news story of the night is about Cosmo, the telepathic Russian cosmonaut space dog.
Yes, Tavares.
Who's the security head of security on Nowhere. Recruits a new Marvel Cosmic crew in June, in the pages of Guardians of the Galaxy annual number 1.
Yep.
Annual number 1.
Yeah, and apparently this obviously is tied to the Guardians of the Galaxy number 1, which
right.
Some things happened.
Right. Yeah, a bunch of heroes got pulled into a black hole, and not all of them came out. And we're going to see what happened to some of the other heroes that were in the black hole.
Wormhole. Now that's a different
thing.
Although, hey, whatever. So yes, look for that. That's coming out, and apparently, oh wait, no, that's right. No, I was about to say, wait, it's too early for June solicits. What are you doing? But apparently, that's the thing that came out, and that is it, folks. We have come to the end of the show. We have one more ad read.
You got it. The last ad read is for Wink, the personalized wine club. Wink is a world of wine delivered right to your door. From rosé to Cabernet to Torronté, Wink has over 100 styles of wine to discover. Ever try an orange wine? Wink connects you to a world of exclusive wines tailored to your tastes and delivered directly to your door. Wink delivers 4 bottles of wine to you every month with free shipping. You can pick your own bottles or let Wink choose and match to your taste. It doesn't cost a thing to become a member, and you can skip or cancel anytime. And now the listeners of the Comic Book Chronicles can enjoy an exclusive discount of $20 off your first order. To place your first order with $20 off and to help keep our show free for you, go to our network website at cspn.us/wink. That's cspn.us/WINC. Wink Wines through CSPN. Do it today.
And as we come to the end of this show for the week, we'd like to thank each and every one of you for coming out, whether auditorily or visually. We will be back next week for this locality. So for myself, Roddycat, you can find me at Roddycat on Twitter. At that, you can find me at News Nerds Need on Twitter. You can find me at CBCaps on Instagram. Yeah, all that kind of good stuff. Agent_70 on Twitter and Instagram. PC_Dirt on Twitter. Pop Culture Network on Twitter. Pop Culture Network on Pop Culture Net on Twitter. We don't want to confuse that. I need comics.com. All that is under the Pop Culture Network umbrella. And of course, Tim DOGG98. You can find him at that on Twitter. You can find him at the KLIQ Nation. That's DKLIQ NATION on Twitter, theclicknation.com, and of course, Comic Book Resources, CBR.com, where he's writing his face off. Again, we'll be back next week. More goodies, more comics, more laughs, more loves, all that kind of good mess. I guess there was nothing to say in closing, but this has been the Comic Book Chronicles. Peace.
Peace. 1.